Welcome to At Your Service, the service management podcast on the CRM Audio Network, with your hosts, Business Solutions MVPs, Sarah Jelinek, Scott LaFonte, and Shawn Tabor. Resco is a leading provider of mobile solutions for Dynamics 365. Resco Mobile CRM is an invaluable tool for the field service engineer working in field service for Dynamics 365. Other solutions from Resco include Route Planner, which combines geographic and calendar data, even taking into account variables such as traffic and weather, to ensure that your field agents plan the optimal route possible to their work sites. Resco also offers inspections, which allows you to create, assign, complete, and evaluate field inspections with ease. Inspections enables you to shape every step of your inspection process. For more information on these solutions, or to request a demo for any of their offerings, visit www.resco.net. We thank Resco for sponsoring this episode of At Your Service. Welcome to another episode of At Your Service, the service-related podcast on the CRM Audio Network. It's the end of the year. It's the end of 2018. And as always, well, I guess not as always, because the last couple episodes, I think Scott's been out looking for himself. We have my co-host, Scott LaFonte, and the Dynamics 365 diva herself, Miss Sarah Jelinek. How you guys doing?
Working my way to fabulous.
Of course you are. Well, it's the end of the year. This is the last episode, the last non-rerun kind of best of episode, because we might have a best of at the end of the year. But it's the last At Your Service with the whole crew, which I'm happy about. And wow, it's been a whole year now. How do we feel about that? We're looking forward to 2019, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a fun year. It's been fun getting to explore the wonders of customer service, field service, project service with you guys. And yeah, I'm looking forward to 2019. I'm looking forward to how this continues to grow and innovate for us.
And we've had a lot of speaking engagements, the three of us. We've been to a lot of conferences. We've met a lot of our listeners. It really has been a really great year. And so I think the way to really end it on with a bang is with a solid, action-packed agenda. And who better to come up with said agenda than Mr. LaFonte himself?
That's right. Hello, everyone. I did find myself, so I am back.
We're very glad.
But yes, I found myself, and I found a whole bunch of topics. So I am very excited.
So where do you want to start?
I think, Shawn, we should start with my favorite topic. And for those of you who know me, my favorite topic is field service mobile.
Oh, I was going to say animal husbandry, but I'm glad you qualified that.
I'm glad we're sticking with field service mobile.
Yes. I think that's more apparent that's more prevalent for the podcast.
That's topic number 2. But in all seriousness, I think the long-awaited, anticipated release of the new field service mobile app and Woodford project has arrived in the Windows Store, in Google Play, and Apple Store. So it's very exciting that now folks can start taking advantage of some of that functionality that Resco has had in their version for quite some time now. And unfortunately, we just couldn't do that if you were using the Dynamics 365 for Field Service app, the 2017 one, because it was a couple major versions behind the Woodford item, and you just couldn't use it. So this is exciting. This is very, very exciting.
So Scott, one of the things that I love to do in my sessions, and when I'm speaking or just even talking to people, I like to do like a top 5 or top 7 or 11. I have to come up with odd numbers because that's me. I'm odd. So if you were to talk about some of these features, with this mobile app, what are some of the biggest things that you're looking forward to? Because I'm excited because I know when I've installed it and deployed it for some demo environments, I'm like, okay, why are we a couple versions behind? So what are some of the big things that we can look forward to with this?
My let's go top 5.
I like that. Top 5 is a good number.
My top 5. So this is the Scott LaFonte, or Scooters Tutors, as I'm referred to now, apparently.
Scooters? Oh my gosh.
Scooters Tutors.
I can't keep track of all these nicknames. Okay.
I know. So the first is location tracking. So being able to configure the mobile app so that now we can get near real-time GPS positioning of a technician and be able to, I don't want to call it big brotherish, but it does help from a scheduling perspective in seeing if they're on time or they're stuck in traffic, things that you really can't account for, right?
Okay.
I mean, you can say if I left an hour ago to go to another site, well, yeah, he should have been there by now. But I have no idea unless you call me or figure out, are you alive? Well, now I can look, and depending on how I set it up, I can see that functionality, and I can see where this person is and what's going on, and be able to track that. Are they taking the right route? Maybe they're making a detour because they have to go, like Shawn would. He has to go to Funko and get some more Funko Pops.
Yeah, that's a requirement of his day-to-day life. Absolutely.
Exactly. Another one is the functionality that Microsoft put in there on the homepage, which allows you to quickly scan a customer asset. So you can essentially, right from the homepage, click on this button to scan the barcode or serial code or whatever, maybe it's a QR code of an asset, and be able to pull up the details of that piece of equipment. So not that it was relatively a huge deal to do that in the past, because you could, but now you can do that without setting up any additional configuration. And there's some nice logic behind there that Microsoft has really put together that makes it it's very friendly.
Awesome. So yeah, location, you get the ability to scan the assets. That's 2.
Yep, I got 2. My third one, and this one is really nice for anyone that's actually done anything within the mobile app, is the ability to put all of the details in a view in a nicely formatted column. So think of Excel, right? So you have your different widths, so to speak, and everything looks nice and neat. Well, the previous versions, we couldn't do that with the Microsoft app. In the Resco app, you could, but now I have that capability. So it's really nice to be able to go ahead and have it look nice and neat, and put all these other details on there, and it'll format it nicely. So it just looks a little bit more presentable, and it actually makes, in my opinion, development time a lot faster. So that's 3.
That's 3. That's awesome.
The fourth one is you can have multiple forms now on an entity, and then you can set up your rules to determine which form shows up. So kind of like we have in Dynamics, right? We can have different forms for different, different roles. Well, you can set up your rules now. Maybe you have one form that has to show for a particular reason over another, and the other one has more detail, one has less. You can do that now. We weren't able to do that in the past, so that's pretty exciting. It opens up a little bit more flexibility and possibility where maybe we don't have to do any sort of custom coding or logic. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to use that quite a bit on projects from a design perspective and save some custom dev time.
Hey Scott, does that help us be able to avoid having to sync down data and create special rules for that if we have different forms? Can we just set the rules or set the roles for certain forms, and then they never see that data, so we don't have to worry about whether or not it's synced?
Not so much with forms. I mean, you would do that more so on views. So on different, you could have different views for offline or online, and then the form will just display the actual data that's in a view. So think of a form as your Dynamics form. So you'll go to a list view. so to speak, first, click that record, and then drill into it, and that's the form you would see. But now you could see different forms based on different form rules and criteria to select which form.
Cool.
So that one's pretty fancy and pretty exciting. And now you made me forgot my fifth one.
All right, so just to recap, we've got the ability to have, you're talking about location tracking, being able to scan the asset, working with the views a little bit more, working with different forms, and number 5, it's gonna be like I have a feeling it's gonna be super big that you're gonna eventually think of.
Oh, yes, I do.
There we go.
Now I remembered. The old version to get into Woodford, which was solely Silverlight, is now the legacy version. Woohoo! We are now Mobile CRM Woodford HTML5 is the new version. So no longer do you, and it's very stable. It's fast. I know in the beta version in the past, it was sometimes I would click on things and I couldn't scroll or it wouldn't open up. It's fast. It's reliable. It renders really nicely. And now the original platform, which is, again, that solely Silverlight one, is now labeled as Legacy.
Producer Jim, this is where you'd put in a hallelujah.
That's
yes,
right.
That is awesome.
Now, unfortunately, it still has HTML5 plus Silverlight, but we're getting there to getting away from full-fledged Silverlight, which is awesome.
That's cool. I know that when I start to dabble in things, it does become a challenge when you have to work with Silverlight, make sure you're in the right version and get the appropriate browser and working with that. That is awesome. I mean, it seems for some people who maybe are just getting into it, like, okay, really, is that big of a deal? But it does make a huge difference in being able to quickly deploy and work with the solution. That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. It's super, super, super exciting. And I know some folks were out there. Microsoft has updated their documentation. We'll put a link out for the latest and greatest updates for how to download the latest and greatest Woodford project and how to find the new mobile app, as well as any other requirements. They've really done a really nice job with the documentation. So kudos to Kyle Young, David Clark, and the entire Microsoft Field Service product team. They did a really great job with the documentation.
That's great. I'm looking forward to trying this out and seeing that documentation, as you mentioned in the link, of some of the features that are helping to make it easier for consultants that are implementing it, and of course just for people that are managing it and using it.
Nope. Oh, and I have one more. I have a sixth. Sorry.
Bonus. It's a bonus. We've got a bonus. Let's go.
One. You no longer have to go contact Resco or put in a Microsoft support ticket to get the licenses to use mobile. Now everything's done within Field Service in the unified interface. Or if you're not on the unified interface yet, you could still do it in classic web UI. There is a field on the resource that says enable for mobile. And if you select that as yes, they're enabled. And now everything is controlled by the licenses that you've purchased through Microsoft. So it's very, very exciting.
Wow,
Merry
and you said that's in the unified
all.
Interface?
Yeah, so there is, to do some of the setup, right? So if you want to enable your resources for mobile, you have to do that within Dynamics 365. So either in the web UI, you can go there and click the little button on the resource, or in the classic web UI. If you're on either the latest version of Field Service, which is all web or classic unified interface, or if you're a version behind, even the latest and greatest patches for 4.7.5x have that field that say enable for mobile. So it's really cool, but of course I forgot that it was there, and all of a sudden we're trying to test it for a customer, and we're like, wait, what do you mean I'm not provisioned for mobile? Oh yeah, the field's now there. So that was fun.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's it's the little things that matter, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. It is those little things that help you speed up your implementation too, and um, just those little delays always add up. So anything that you can do to make it a little bit more seamless is ideal.
Exactly. So those are my little. There's probably plenty more. I'm sure there's others that maybe have a different list um, or different or other ones. But if you do, love to hear what they are and why, and we'll add them to the list.
Absolutely.
So Sarah, we're coming up with another topic here which seems to come up, and I know there's some talk about other surveying tools coming out and about, but lately I've had a lot of customers start talking about voice of the customer
Hmm.
and different scenarios for using it and how often we should we should send surveys to customers, and then of course our favorite one, which I love, the acronym is GDPR.
Oh, yes.
And what's your thoughts and takes when you're working with clients on the customer service side, in terms of wanting to survey their customers for feedback on how we handled the issues, or how are we doing as a whole as a company and things like that. I mean, what do you tell them? What do you talk to them about to get them going? Because it seems that when I talk to them, there's just so many open questions about using CSAT scores or NPS and all of this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for some of my customers, they I don't I'm not saying this is a bad way, but they don't want to inundate their customers with a lot of information, but yet you still want to know, how is your team performing and how things are going. So for it's kind of the same situation. It could be open-ended. Some people say, well, if they have a problem, then they can just tell us on the call or tell us via email. We'll get it routed to the appropriate person. They can open up a case and we can handle it there. So for some, they just they let those experiences come back to them when they happen. They don't necessarily go out and say, okay, well, after every time we interact with you, we're going to send you a survey and we're going to collect this information. And then they have some that just want to to reach out to their client base. Sometimes they want to do that maybe once a quarter. People that they've worked with, either if they're like a consulting firm, if they're a sales firm, they just do, kind of like what they call a little of a heartbeat type survey of reaching out to people and just send it out saying, okay, great, we've enjoyed working with you the past quarter. We're just interested in getting some feedback from you if you have time to let us know. And they just ask some questions, kind of rating, how are things going? Are you happy? Was there anything you're not satisfied with? If you're not, what happened? And, in those types of situations, I think that customer has a pretty good, they've got a finger on the pulse of how things are going with their customers, so they're really not too surprised by that. But I think a lot of people, when they think of providing that feedback, that customer service, that feedback with like a survey, they're always cautious about getting to the point where they don't want their customers even more frustrated by that. So it kind of varies. But what have you experienced when you've worked with customers and how they want to gather that information?
Yeah, it's fairly similar, and what I'm finding is that they're trying to jam pack so many questions into a survey because they want to capture all of these different points in terms of maybe a CSR's knowledge or professionalism, or and then they go into maybe their products or service offerings, and then they go into the company as a whole, and then they start kind of branching all this stuff, right? If you let's just say, would you recommend us to colleagues or other customers, or whatever it may be, and if you answer below a certain number or value, then they start asking all these other questions. And what they say is they experience a lot of folks that just are not completing the surveys.
Mm-hmm.
And I start looking at some of these surveys and I see the branching logic, and a lot of them aren't using voice of the customer. Some of them they're going to be using it, but they're using things maybe like Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at some of the surveys and there's so many questions, and I go, you would lose me.
Yes.
I would probably get to about page 3 and just say, forget it. I don't have time for this.
And not necessarily speaking about any particular survey product, or an example I can identify with that is, I travel quite a bit. So people probably, if they listen to prior episodes, will know my airline of choice. But usually when a flight goes perfect, I'll get an email saying, hey, can you fill out the survey? If I have a flight delay, I get an email saying, hey, can you fill out the survey? And it looks like it's simple. They give me an email that says, rate us from 1 to 10. And then you click on it, and it's like, great. Okay, now I'm going to take you through like a 5-page survey to talk about your entire flight experience. And like, I'm happy to give you just a one question. And if it's really bad, then maybe you want to find out what happened. But I mean, when it's like, oh, when you're at the gate, how did this person, operate? Were you notified of delay? I mean, yeah, it is filling out a multi-page survey. So I've gotten to the point where when I get that information now, I know that if I start, it's going to take me a few minutes to complete. And I want it to be just, boom, here's my feedback. It's good. I'm happy. Let it be. But this same airline also, when I call them, if I have to change a ticket or something like that, they always ask me a question at the end, after your experience with this agent, what's the likelihood of you hiring this person? And I give my number, and that's it. And I will answer that survey every time because it's that simple, just that piece of feedback. If I'm not satisfied, I'll give my rating, and then you know what, you guys can follow up with me. I'm happy to talk to you at another time, but I don't want to spend 5 minutes of my time answering something that I end up having to do multiple times. So keeping it simple, but I also understand their need of wanting to collect that information.
Yeah, it's difficult and challenging, especially for individuals like us that are either traveling quite a bit or we're inundated with a lot of meetings and we sit in front of the computer a lot. The last thing that we want to do is, when I have a little bit of free time and I'm on my computer, is answer it, take 20 minutes to do a survey.
Mm-hmm.
So it's finding that sweet spot, right? And I guess the goal would be is, well, what's your objective for the survey, right? And what are you really trying to capture? So if it's a case that you're calling in for an issue, well, maybe limit it to a couple questions about your experience with the rep, your experience with, let's just say it's a product issue, and you send that survey based on that product issue, and kind of keep it to maybe 1 or 2 questions, and maybe give them the opportunity to just detail out in text to say, well, here's my additional details, instead of having them go through some sort of long logic stem.
Right. And having questions where you can't progress until you fill everything out. There's things they don't apply to me. I could maybe click not applicable or something like that, but just be able to go by that. So that, it is finding that sweet spot. So, and that's going to be the challenge, because you do want to know how you're performing. You do want to know how your agents, your customer service representatives, how they're all performing. And we know that, the more data that you get, the better, because you get more analysis on that, but you also want to make sure that you're getting quality stuff as well. So, in those situations, how often do we send that information out? You do a go-to meeting with somebody, for example, if you're an attendee, as soon as you close the meeting, you get that questionnaire. That's an example of something that I get, and it's a simple 3-question. I don't have to elaborate. I don't have multiple pages. So do you do something like that? And like you say, give people the chance to elaborate if they want to, or just keep it simple and just do ratings. So it's a challenge, and it all depends on what you want and what you think your customers are willing to take the time to enter, and your response rate too.
Yeah, definitely, because the last thing I think we want, or any customer wants, is to get inundated with a bunch of unsubscribes.
Hmm.
And then you can't send them any more surveys because hopefully you're adhering to GDPR or any other regulations within whatever country you may be, right? And where you're sending that survey data to. So every country, Canada has different regulations than the U.S., than the U.K., and so on and so forth. So hopefully you're adhering to those, and so I think the short and sweet of it is find that sweet spot. Maybe have some internal folks look at the survey and have them take it, or even have someone else take a look at it and provide some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think an interesting statistic I heard was, we're getting to the age with all the technology we have and the readiness of information that our attention spans have gone down so drastically that, so for some people they might have like a 7-second attention span. So yeah, keeping it simple, finding that sweet spot. Don't inundate, and think of what you really, really need to know. I think that's the key. Great topic, great questions.
All right. So hopefully, let's see what happens in the future for voice of the customer and Dynamics. I really like some of the Power BI voice of the customer analytics app. So that's a pretty good one that you don't really have to configure. I've showed it to some customers and they love it. So hopefully we continue to see some good things from a surveying tool perspective.
Absolutely.
But I have another topic for you, Sarah.
Yeah. Speaking of cases.
Speaking of cases, we know, well, as you know, we've had plenty of conversation lately on entitlements and contracts and, and setting up, just like any other customer, like we could be talking to Microsoft and you have a support agreement and you're able to either maybe pay on a volume perspective of cases and support, or maybe it's a yearly contract or whatever it may be. But a lot of things come up lately that say, in a Dynamics world, I mean, how could we bill customers for support when we don't have, any sort of entitlement or contract in place? And we see it sometimes, I think, in the marketplace where, let's just say you have an issue with your laptop and you can pay someone X amount of dollars for remote support. And that might work from a B2C perspective, but from a B2B, I mean, I think there's additional challenges that customers are like, well, is this common? Does it happen? And if so, how would we go about handling something like that?
Oh, that's a good question. So I've seen organizations that when they work with their customers, a lot of times they will have some type of support offering, and you can think of it like an entitlement, where it could be, you can contact us via email anytime. You can call us. We'll get back to you within a certain period of time. And you just, as part of working with that customer, they might just say, all right, what we're going to do is we'll just bill you a flat rate, maybe per month or something like that. Where when a customer service representative is working in the system, they don't have to worry about, how many emails email cases can a customer have? How many phone call cases can they have? If we're doing anything with the social media perspective of being able to respond, using through some of the tools like Twitter, for example, that they don't worry about that. They provide that level of service and accordingly move that up the chain if they need to. So they kind of do that flat rate with that. So then with the customer, you don't have to worry about having an active entitlement and having your entitlement channels configured to, put your limits on there, because they do really offer unlimited support. But you're still paying for something like that. For others, they just say, all right, you bought our product, you bought our service. We're just going to provide you the basic level of support. Anything that goes beyond, we might bill you per hour or per phone call or per incident. But they don't necessarily have that within the system that you're setting that up. So I've seen a couple of different deployments like that. I love the concept of entitlements, service level agreements, trying to figure out that balance of what the customer is wanting to do. Contracts were initially configured that way. And I think we just ran into some limitations with that, but I think entitlements allowed us to be a little bit more granular in how we were doing things. Um, but for some people, they don't want to have to worry about tracking the time, tracking how many. They usually just do like a flat rate and say, here you go, contact us as much as you want. Because some people might think, oh my gosh, that's going to be a drain on our resources, but it's also a drain on the customer too to try contact you as many times. So some people think it's not. Some people think it's going to be more than what really ends up being the case with support. So what have you experienced with that, or when you're talking about billing people?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've experienced quite a bit of the same, and what we're trying to get into with some of the items that I've been looking at is very similar to if you look at a field service model where you're billing for time, and it kind of creates an invoice, right, when a work order is closed. So having that same kind of concept, right? I mean, if you're going to be let's just say you're using USD, and one of the things that comes up is like, oh, well, you don't have a support contract or anything. Do you want to pay per hour or per call? Okay, great. Then it's this. You get the agreement, so on and so forth. And then being able to kind of build that invoice functionality at the end of a case, and especially if they're a customer, then you can email that to them or have it be on some sort of portal. I think that might be a really cool use case to kind of build that out and have that kind of one-off functionality.
Yeah, that's a great idea, a great example of you definitely still want to be able to provide that service, but being upfront with that. And I think that's one of the powerful things about using Dynamics for customer service or for field service. Dynamics 365 for customer service or field service. Got to get the full name in there,
Exactly.
Having the ability to make that information visible to a customer service representative or to a field service technician, so that when they're looking at those details about the customer, they can see, all right, well, in the example I mentioned, they've got a support contract. I can stay as long as I need to on the phone with them, whatever I need to do to solve their issue or to fix their problem. I can do that. But if they're not, I can at least be upfront and say, if we can, I'm happy to continue with you, but you will probably get billed, by the hour, by the 15-minute block, whatever. Unified Services is a great example, as you mentioned, for that, providing that notification so you can be upfront with the customer about that.
Now, what do you think about, in field service, we have that agreement functionality, and a lot of customers will call it, well, what's an agreement? Well, it's like a contract. Right? You have a start date, you have an end date, you set up your how many quote-unquote work orders you may do within that time frame. I wonder if at some point we'll see that kind of functionality go across the platform and say, okay, you have this agreement or contract, aka an entitlement, so to speak, and be able to do it for work orders, for cases, and have it be one setup across the platform, and you can set up for your service, for your field service, and then it looks at it that way. I mean, it would be kind of nice to see it like that. I mean, we see some other disparities in the application, such as in customer service, we see the holiday schedule. Mm-hmm. In field service, we see business closures. Very similar setup, but they don't talk to one another. And so it would be nice if we can get that all kind of congealed into one, so that and I understand you might have maybe your customer service follow a different schedule than your field service folks, but it's the same functionality, right? You're still setting up your holiday schedule, your business closures. You're setting up your entitlements or your contracts and agreements. Let's see that in one area, and then I wonder if that will open up a whole world of possibilities.
Oh, I agree, and that's a really good example of where you've got two that operate so closely and perform almost the same. I love the concept of agreements, and I love the idea of that, because it is kind of like that. We're going to provide regular maintenance for you, And that's kind of the idea behind an agreement, right? You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's kind of the same thing for customer service too. We want to continue to provide support, to provide assistance, on a product, via we do an email or a phone or something like that. And we're going to regularly bill you for this because maybe we bill for our customer support in that respect. To be able to say, yeah, you'll have unlimited unlimited email support, some phone support, and we'll come on site and do some maintenance for you. Yeah, I'd love to see that all together. And I don't think it's an impossible possibility. The rate that Microsoft continues to evolve and improve and make these products work together, speak together, work much more efficiently for us. I look forward to that day. I don't know when it will be. I have no idea if that's in the plans, but hopefully they're hearing and saying, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it." We could only hope, right?
Well, it's something that I always wondered about is with the SLAs and with the billing, what is, and I think I know part of the answer to this, but I'd really like your guys' input. What is the best way to really measure whether or not you have the appropriate SLAs created for your customers, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you have SLAs where customer gets so many calls into the call center, or they get so many, they could have so many service requests or work orders created. That's all fine and good, but how are you effectively monitoring that you have the appropriate SLAs in place to be the most cost effective and beneficial for your bottom line for your business?
That is a really good question. So how do you measure that?
Well, I know you can query the SLA KPI
Mm-hmm.
entity. You can get a lot of good data out of that, but you really have to. I think this comes into where you really have to have some level of integration with your ERP system to be able to measure financial data, unless you store a good bit of financial information in your Dynamics for customer engagement instance. That's generally where I get tripped up in implementations, because when these kind of questions come up, it's more you can look at the trends, you could look at how many customers have reached their SLA, how many have exceeded it, how many have you had to do concessions and provide extensions, that sort of thing. But I've never gotten that sweet spot of, how do I normalize on a year over year basis the standards for SLAs. So it's a tricky one.
So are you talking SLAs in terms of the level? We talk about level of service, right? In terms of how
Right,
much service I provide. And when I think
right.
of SLAs, I think of the timeliness of providing that. In terms of, did I respond to you within the allotted time I told you we would? Did I resolve your issue in the allotted time that we promised you? So I guess I think of it from the time perspective of how quickly did we get to you? How quickly did we resolve this? Um,
Well, I'm thinking of the costs associated to perform that SLA. So, you may have SLAs that are constantly being met, right? And you're providing really excellent service to your customers. But are you scaling that appropriately for the amount of business that those customers do to
oh,
get the
I see what you're
most?
saying. Hmm.
Yeah, that's the sticky wicket that I always get tripped up on. How do you as consultants, how do you provide that kind of guidance to a client to say, if you did X, you'd find year over year a better value. So,
You're right. That does come down to a strong understanding and integration with your ERP system. Um, and so in situations like that, Shawn, rethinking, from a reporting perspective of trying to get that. So paying for these resources, um, to provide that support and how much we have and kind of building that cost. Is that something that from a reporting perspective, do you pull that back into customer engagement? Like, okay, well, all the invoices or all the billing that we've done, or do you look at just uh, working with the two types of products and utilizing tools to kind of whether you create a data warehouse or something like that to get that
Hmm.
information? Is that the situations you've run into
Yeah,
when you're trying to report on that?
yeah. Because if you don't have a consolidated data warehouse,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're not, if your customer's not standardized on Power BI reporting, it makes it a little more difficult because you can, like I said, you could query the SLA KPI entity and get a lot of good data, but you to really do it effectively, I think you have to look at revenues received by client and SLAs applied, and then look at that over your entire customer base to level set those SLAs out.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could be giving, you could have a customer that you've had for 25 years, but they're not really making a lot of revenue for you. You could be giving them a very generous SLA just because of the time they've been with you, and that's fine, that's
Mm-hmm.
acceptable. But if you're doing that for a large number of customers, that could get problematic if you're not monitoring them.
Yeah. And I think it
So,
all comes down to in the end, how do you deliver that to them? Is it something that they pay for, or is it something that you just offer as part of your products and services?
right,
That's
right.
that's that's a really good question. So that's where in the cases that people just say, pay a rate maybe per user that you have in your company or something like that.
Hmm.
That for the and we see that kind of Microsoft does that a little bit for some of their pricing as well, right? Based on how many
Hmm.
users you have, we're gonna bill you for this, or we're going to have you pay for this feature, this service, which is an entirely feasible plan to try to
Yep.
recuperate some of that. Absolutely. Yeah, good questions.
Very cool. Well, didn't mean to the discussion to a halt, but given,
You have that effect on us, Scott.
well,
No,
sometimes
but it's good
it's
food for thought.
well, yeah,
Absolutely.
and the discussion really got me thinking. So, I figured this would be the best time to ask. And if anybody listening, if you've run into that situation where you've provided a solution for that, we'd love to hear how you've approached that. You could send that to voice@crm.audio, or you can tweet one of us on Twitter and look in the show notes for the Twitter handles.
Absolutely. And I think like I said, it is food for thought. I think people can now think of, oh, well, that's actually something good I should be reporting on. So
Hmm.
kudos.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Shawn, I think we hit all the high notes for today. Voice of the customer, field service mobile, cases and billing, and it's been an exciting end to the year for
And
At
you
Your Service.
And I'm not going to lie to you, Scott, you did a fine job with the agenda. Very well done. And yes,
Thank you.
this was a action-packed, as I said in the beginning, action-packed episode of At Your Service to end the year. So,
See what happens when I find myself?
Yes,
exactly.
did a great job
We
on
need
that.
we need to let you find yourself a little more. Um, so I guess do we sign off with any parting thoughts on the new year? Um, I know Sarah and I on the episode before this talked a little bit about what we're hoping for the product and just in general for the new year. But Scott, you weren't on, you were finding yourself. So anything you're looking forward to for 2019 in the product or just in general, and don't say the Yankees winning the World Series because it just isn't going to happen.
I'm really looking for the New York Giants to have a winning season, but that won't happen either.
No, not no.
So I'll stick to D365. I'm really looking forward to uh, utilizing a lot of the new features that are coming with field service, the SLA components, and hopefully kind of seeing that merging a little bit more of that kind of core three: project service, field service, and customer service to really provide a core service capability and fully integrated or
Hmm.
I should say embedded experience.
Absolutely. And then with all the AI functionality coming in the with just customer service for AI, and just by extension, all the things we can do with it. At some point, hopefully in 2019, early 2020, we're going to see some real integration with that AI on those components as well. So here's to that. So
definitely, I will drink to that.
And absolutely. Well, then I guess it's time for us to sign off for 2018. We'll be back in 2019, and we'll be talking more at your service. And I think it's this at this point we say happy holidays, happy New Year, and I think it's time to kick it over to our friends at Resco. What do you guys think?
Sounds great. I echo everything that Shawn said.
All right, let's roll.
Happy holidays, everybody. And take it away, Resco.
Hi there, and welcome to this week's episode. My name is Agnes. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Resco, and this week I'm going to go over a bit about our security here at Resco. Now, not security as in security guards, but security when it comes to your overall working with our technology within Resco Cloud, our mobile app, and also our products. One of the most important aspects of everyday company life is to make sure that the data is accessed only by the users that are entitled to them. So for this, CRM servers use tools like security roles and permissions, and even field level permissions. So good news is that Resco takes all these options into account, and the user using Resco cannot access, data that the CRM server will provide them otherwise. So if they're not enabled to use it, they're not going to simply have access to it. So it's because Resco queries for data in the user context. So additionally, it is possible to decide what data to keep in offline mode, and of course using sync filters. Using sync filters, it's possible to define what records for each entity will be kept locally on the device for the Resco mobile app. And in the case of sensitive data, it's possible to exclude any entity from the local database, so making its data available only in online mode. From the user's perspective, it's also possible to manage which users can actually use the Resco mobile app to access data. So it's done via the Mobile User License Management in Woodford. That's our customization tool, and only users that have the mobile license enabled can actually use the app with the company data. Additionally, it's also possible to manage what devices are allowed to connect to the CRM server. So if you roll out all devices to users that should be using, the data, and all others, you can actually say, the ones that you can basically highlight and neglect who can and who cannot use certain data through the mobile devices that have already been enabled. You can simply uncheck the boxes that of the certain devices that are there. And in case of, bring your own device policy, the administrator can actually approve or deny specific devices from signing into the mobile app with the CRM. On top of that, it's also possible to lock or wipe the Resco mobile application remotely from Woodford. Yes, you heard that correctly. And this means that in case a device is lost or stolen, the app can be locked or the local database can be absolutely deleted. So to manage the same when there's no access to internet from the device, it's possible to set a security policy. So that applies the lock or the wipe function. For example, when the app did not connect to the CRM server in a specific period of time, or when the password is entered incorrectly a couple of times, you can then opt in this way to have it remotely deleted or locked out. Another option is actually to use the mobile device management to manage devices and applications available to use this data. And also, in addition to managing the app, it's possible to deploy and remove the application completely from any devices. So I hope that this has given you some insight into what Resco has to offer. Like I mentioned, we take into all accounts when it comes to security, making sure that you're being able to easily access all the different devices, being able to easily access and whether allow or deny any users from access to your data with mobile devices is so easy to do with us. But if you need any other help, please reach out to us at communications@resco.net. Thank you so much, and until next time, bye-bye.
On behalf of myself, Shawn Tabor, my co-host Scott LaFonte, and the Dynamics 365 diva Sarah Jelinek, we thank you for listening and subscribing to the podcast. You can reach us at voice@crm.audio. On Twitter, you can follow us, CRM Hobbit for me, for Scott, at FLD Service _Guru, and of course, at Dine365 Diva for Sarah. For more information and content about what we spoke about on this episode and others, visit our blog at atyourservicepod.com. This has been At Your Service on the CRM Audio Network, a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC.